Oh, I should probably turn the music off. Let's turn that off.
This is new.
Yeah, let's turn that off here for a second. I run that during the intro, and I just got lost in the sauce there. What up, everybody? How you doing? It's another episode of Giants Collective, and you see the band is back together. We're back together. Anthony, 100%. Chris, 100%. Adriana, back from her trip to Germany. And yes, unless you've been under a rock or have had your head up where the sun don't shine, I think we know what the big news is here in Giants land, and that obviously is Daniel Jones pretty much is no longer a New York Giant. He is technically, but we know he'll never see another snap with his football team as long as he exists. We're going to get the panel's, view on that, and obviously, if we have any time, we'll take some questions from the chat. But good to have you all together again. Great to see you. Adriana, we'll start with you. Before you get to your thoughts on Daniel Jones, the benching, got to know a little bit about Germany. Adriana was in Germany for the game. So you got to give us a little bit of experience besides the fact that we suck. But the trip itself had to be pretty awesome.
It was really awesome. I'm very glad that I went. I also extended it for the rest of the week and made a vacation out of it. So I felt bad for all the Giants fans who had to get on a plane the next morning after that god-awful game and come home and go back to work. I was like, at least I'm going to Austria, going to some places in Germany. I can explore and have some fun. But it actually was a really great experience. The Giants had some very cool activations. They had this thing called Giants House set up where they had food trucks outside and heaters, and there were a ton of people there. They had like 800 tickets that they had given away for that event, which was amazing. Phil Simms, Carl Banks, Victor Cruz, Sean O'Hara. They had a bunch of former players there, which was awesome. They had a little starter set up and free drinks and stuff like that. So the event before the game, the night before at Giants House, was really cool. Great experience. And then the game itself was actually very cool. They had 70,000 people there, ton of German people. What I thought was really interesting was everyone was in all sorts of different jerseys because the Germans were just like, we're happy to be at an NFL game. Right. So it's really cool. The one thing that was the most obnoxious thing, and it made me never want to go to a Carolina Panthers game, is
you were sitting next to Eagles fans? No?
No, thank God. Actually, the people sitting next to me on both sides were Giants fans.
Okay.
The guys in front of us were both from the US. The guys in front of us were German, and they had on Raiders jerseys. So I was like, all right, at least we're not like by Eagles Cowboys fans, which was nice. I don't know if any of you have been to a Panthers game. I am never going to go to one in Carolina. Every 10 seconds, they're banging the thing, yelling, keep pounding, and there is a literal cat noise that goes like, it is. I was like, I fucking hate the Panthers. I never want to see this again. It was the most obnoxious thing in the world. That was the worst part, honestly. It was worse than losing, was having to endure that for 4 hours and then in overtime.
Yeah. Yeah, I forgot that even went to overtime. I put pretty much every game out of my freaking head this year. At least I've tried to. So, Adriana, at least the trip was awesome. Glad you're back safe and sound. Now, give us the dirt on Daniel Jones. What do you think? What was your thought process when you saw this initially? The Giants said, "You done."
I wasn't surprised. I was more surprised that they went to DeVito instead of Locke at first. I think when you kind of think it over and you look at the way the season is going, it makes sense why they went to DeVito. Mara cares about ticket sales. They know everyone has tuned out. They don't care about this team now, especially after losing to the Panthers. Like if you were kind of hit or miss before that, now you're really like, I could give two shits about this team. And I think, part of the reasoning was Daboll with his BS about Tommy DeVito giving us the spark and whatever, sure. But there is excitement amongst the fan base now where I can guarantee if they went to Drew Lock, there was going to be none of that. Like no one is going to convince me that Drew Lock is a better quarterback than Daniel Jones. I was at the summer practices. We saw him in preseason before he got injured. He looked awful. And obviously, like the people are like, oh, I can't believe they paid him $5 million. That should have went to Saquon. First of all, it doesn't work like that. Second of all, they paid him because he was coming off a pretty good year with Seattle. And he had to come in against the Giants last year and destroyed us. So it's not like I think he regressed or whatever. Maybe it was learning the new offense. I don't know what it was, but he looked way worse for the Giants this summer than he did last year when he had to play with the Seahawks. So I don't think Tommy DeVito is really any better. I just think that he brings whatever sort of energy, life, ticket sales, whatever you want to call it. He brings it way more than Drew Lock does. And I think that was probably one of their biggest factors.
Anthony, I know you're happy Daniel Jones is done. Look at that smile.
And he's a fan of DeVito, I've seen on Twitter.
Yeah, yes.
That's for sure.
Now, listen, we're 4 Italian people. I mean, we obviously have a little bias towards Tommy. There's no doubt about it. Anthony, give us your thoughts. Your initial thought when you saw Daniel Jones benched, there's no surprise, but you're probably like,
I mean, I'm thrilled about it, honestly. But let's add some context here. The night before Daniel Jones got benched, I'm still out here in California on my bye week vacation. I went to the Chargers versus Bengals game on Sunday Night Football, and I got to watch 2 of the best quarterbacks in the NFL go toe-to-toe. It was an exhilarating experience. I had a ton of fun. Watching Justin Herbert and Joe Burrow go up against each other just made me long for a good quarterback to be on the New York Giants. I mean, it was just like, I miss when the Giants could be in shootouts like this with good quarterbacks, one-upping each other. Every other drive, they're making big clutch throw after clutch throw, tight window touchdown pass. I was just like, man, it's so much fun watching these teams, and it's so miserable watching the New York Giants. And I went to bed, and I was like, I pray tomorrow I wake up and Daniel Jones is benched. And God listened to me. He answered my prayers. I woke up, Daniel Jones was benched. So it was a great Monday morning for me. I think that this could be the start of a new era. Not that Tommy DeVito is going to step in and make us competitive like the Chargers or the Bengals and, situations like that, but it at least starts the process of moving on from Daniel Jones. I've seen people call it the end of an era, and obviously that's an apt way to put it. It's just been a long time coming. And, when you really reflect on the season and you look back at week 1 and what we saw from Daniel Jones, even to the preseason training camp, had the Giants made this decision a lot sooner, maybe they could be more competitive. We're talking about putting in a backup quarterback to bring that spark. Well, that spark has been dead before the season even started. I feel like it died in that preseason game against the Houston Texans when Daniel Jones threw that pick 6 from his own end zone. I feel like we just never had the spark on offense all year long. So I feel like this was just a waiting game. We all knew it was inevitable. It was going to happen at some point. I get why they wanted to wait until the bye week. They wanted to give Daniel Jones an opportunity to prove them right with this ridiculous contract that he's playing on. But really, I feel like they didn't do themselves any favors, and they did everybody on this team and everybody in this fan base a disservice by not making this decision sooner. It was inevitable. We knew it was coming. They should have gotten it over with. And I think that the argument for Tommy DeVito is when Brian Daboll said that he put in Drew Lock to bring a spark in the fourth quarter of that game against the Eagles, not much of a spark was really lit, but we saw it last year with Tommy DeVito. We know that he lit a spark for this team. So if that's what they're looking for is a spark, I think Tommy DeVito is the right decision. Like Adriana said, helps bring fans to the stadium, does things like that, brings some more eyes and positive attention on the New York Giants to have the hometown hero playing. All of that stuff is true, but also at the end of the day, just bringing that spark on the football field, having a quarterback who's not afraid to throw downfield, who's playing with nothing to lose. I mean, 3rd and 1 flea flicker, that ball is getting thrown from Tommy DeVito, and it's maybe even a touchdown, I think. So I think that spark is exactly what the Giants are looking for. And again, while Tommy DeVito isn't necessarily a future Hall of Famer by any means, or maybe even future starter, he's at least going to bring that spark.
Chris, give us your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, we all knew it. I think any logical Giants fan knew 4, 5, 6 weeks ago if the team continued to do what they were doing, which was playing lousy, and Daniel Jones being a big part of that, this was the optimal time to do it. You have 2 weeks to prepare for the next game. You get the whoever you decided to be, whether it was Locke or whether it was DeVito, you get them into the game plan. You get them ready to go. So I think we all knew, especially after they lost to Carolina, that this was going to happen. It was inevitable. It makes all the sense in the world. And yeah, I think the biggest factor is the contract. Like, you could certainly argue that Daniel Jones is the best quarterback on the roster, but he's not worth playing at this point. The team's 2-8. He's not a part of your future. It's time to turn the page. It was inevitable. It had to happen. And I laugh at these people. I go on Twitter the last couple of days, and people are making this a sob story for Daniel Jones. I don't feel bad for Daniel Jones. I was as fair as I could be to Daniel Jones. I rooted for Daniel. I rooted my ass off for Daniel Jones. I'm going to root for whoever's the starting quarterback next year. I'm going to root my ass off for him because I'm a Giants fan. But at the end of the day, the guy got $160 million. He got 6 years. Now, if you want to argue that some of those years, and it would be a strong argument, he didn't get much of an opportunity, that's fair. But there's been several quarterbacks. Look at Sam Darnold with the New York Jets. He had 3 years, or maybe it was 3 or 4 years, where he didn't have much of an opportunity. They threw him out. He got 6 years. He got several coaches fired. I'm not putting it all on him. He was a part of it. I don't feel bad for the guy. We all knew he was going to be benched at this point in the season, unless he completely turned it around. We didn't see it coming. We moved forward with DeVito. As far as the decision to go with DeVito, I don't know if it's so much to do with ticket sales. I honestly think Daboll feels, not saying much because Drew Lock isn't very good, but I think Daboll feels that DeVito could provide a spark. He feels like he's a well-liked guy in that locker room, and maybe the team will fight for him over the next 2 or 3 weeks. And I do think Daboll's trying to save his job. I'm not saying I'm predicting him to get fired, but this team can't go out and look embarrassing the last 7 weeks. We've seen what's happened in the past with the New York Giants, and Daboll knows that. So I think he's putting in DeVito because he actually thinks it gives this team the best chance to win football games at this point in time.
With Daniel Jones, I think it was obvious he was getting benched at this point, especially with how poorly he performed, because he didn't perform well. It's not like the Giants went out there and lost 31-28, and he threw for 320 yards and 3 touchdowns, and you'd have a harder time saying he doesn't give us the best chance to win. The fact that he went out and he had a passer rating of 50, the fact that he didn't throw a passing touchdown against the worst defense in the freaking league and looked extremely inept, as he has for 6 years pretty much outside of a game here or there, it's obvious he's never been the guy. And much like you, Chris, I rooted my ass off for him. I gave him every opportunity to, hey, maybe this guy's going to turn around. All right, I understand the contract. I was fine with them giving him the contract at the point that they did. He's lived a charmed life. There's no doubt about it. Timing has worked out in his favor every time this type of thing has come up, whether it be the fifth-year option, whether it be the contract. They couldn't tag him in 2022, which somebody on Twitter, I don't remember if it was Art Stapleton, I forgot who it was, said they should have tagged Daniel Jones. And I'm like, well, then what the hell would you have done with Barkley? He didn't answer me back. You can't tag them both. So Barkley would have walked in 2023. Then you would have had, why did you let Barkley walk after you just went to the playoffs? And we already know what the fan base thinks about this. I've never seen a quarterback divide a fan base the way, or a player even, divided the way Daniel Jones has, especially since he got the contract. Barkley didn't. Barkley's playing like an MVP in Philadelphia, and Daniel Jones and the Giants are 2-8. It's time. And finally, when the year is over and the Giants do address this situation, the fan base can finally come together again and root for whoever the hell our center is. As far as DeVito goes, I kind of have a different perspective of why they went with Tommy DeVito. Drew Lock, who is not happy about being passed over, was brought in here to be a backup. He's here for 1 year. He is not the future of the Giants. And the way I look at it is this. Had the Giants been competitive, say we are 6-4 right now, and Daniel Jones had gotten hurt, then you're going with Drew Lock saying, okay, he gives us the best chance to win. We want to have a serviceable backup that can give us a chance to win games, get into the postseason. Well, that's out the window now. Drew Lock ain't coming back here next year. You're looking at Tommy DeVito for next year saying, can he be our number 2 guy? You're going to get an extended look at Tommy DeVito and say, can he be the guy? Do we have to go out and sign another backup for $5 million, for $7 million? Do we have to go out and get a guy like Jacoby Brissett or Jameis Winston? We have to pay all that money to a backup, or can Tommy DeVito do it? This is really why I think Brian Daboll did that. And I understand some Giants fans are getting a little concerned. Oh, no, he might win 3 or 4 games. He's not going to do that. Because, Chris, you mentioned this before. When he won the 3 games, he played very well against Washington. The other 2 games, he was okay. But our defense turned the opponent over 13 times in 3 games. I don't think we've turned the teams over 13 times all year. We have 1 interception.
We've got one interception this year.
It's pathetic. So I think that has a lot to do with why they went with Tommy DeVito. Again, you can put him in a hat. I don't think Drew Lock gives us a better chance to win. I don't think Tommy DeVito gives us a better chance to win. You can Daniel Jones is the best quarterback in this team, but we're 2-8 and he sucks. So what's the difference?
Yeah.
What is it? There is no difference.
I think the main reason why we brought in Locke also had more to do actually with the beginning of the year, because they didn't know what Daniel Jones was going to be coming off the ACL tear. So they said, let's go out and spend $5-6 million on a backup, because if Daniel Jones isn't ready to start the season, at least we'll have a somewhat credible quarterback that could man the fort for 2 or 3 weeks. So that, I think, was always the primary reason why they brought him in the first place. And people crying about this $5 million contract. Do you see what backup quarterbacks make? $5 million is nothing in today's NFL at the quarterback position. It's absolutely nothing. It is what it is. I honestly think Daboll, like Bad Dog said, he may think Lock is like slightly better, but it's so close that it's at the point where you might as well see if a guy could be part of the future of your team with DeVito, if he could morph into a potential QB2. The difference between the two quarterbacks is not very much. Lock's been a career backup his entire career, and he's had like 1 or 2 good games. So I'm not stunned with the decision for DeVito.
Anthony, let me ask you this. I've read some stuff. Obviously, Dexter Lawrence has come out in favor or, supported Daniel Jones, saying he's his best friend and it sucks and this and that. He understands it, but it sucks. And, there's one player coming out pretty much saying the Giants are kind of a clown show, which I said years ago. And Joe Judge whipped that from me. Thank you, Joe. I always appreciate you quoting me. Do you think it's possible, Anthony, that Daboll is losing the locker room? I mean, when you're 2-8, it's easy to do it. Last year we were really bad, but you saw they kept fighting for him. Do you think it's possible that he's losing the locker room? Do you think that this is just a kind of a shift and that the Giants have to just roll the punches here?
I totally think it's possible that he's losing the locker room, but I think more so than anything, Joe Schoen is losing the locker room. Joe Schoen has made several decisions that players have called out in the past and in the current. I mean, you think about when Kayvon Thibodeau got on that one podcast and said he feels like Saquon Barkley should have been paid before Daniel Jones. I think he said that last offseason. I mean, he was right. And at this point, you just stack that up with a bunch of these other decisions that have been made. The players being vocally frustrated about Nick McLeod getting cut midseason. Darius Slayton has obviously been vocally critical of the team not giving him the money that he wanted in the offseason, just handing him those crappy incentives that they gave him instead of the contract extension. I don't think it's Brian Daboll. I think Brian Daboll tries his best to keep the locker room intact. I think that it's really, at the end of the day, Joe Schoen frustrating the players and not treating them with the amount of respect that they probably desire in terms of their contracts and the togetherness with the team. So I think Daboll has done a decent job keeping guys together. I think when you look at last year, there were some blips. Obviously, throwing the tablet down near Daniel Jones wasn't a great look. The feud between him and Wink Martindale, all of those problems are true and they existed. But at the end of the day, I feel like he's done a fine job. The players have kept everything in-house for the most part when it comes to coaching decisions. It's been about player personnel decisions that they've been vocally critical about. And that's more of an indictment on Joe Schoen to me. Chris,
what do you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think any locker room when you're 2-8 is not going to be happy. But what I will say, credit to Daboll last year, and we've talked about that a lot in the past, a team that had every right to quit. Well, I don't think a team ever has a right to quit, but a team that had every excuse to quit last year when they were down to their third string quarterback. They had like 2 wins. They fought for him. I mean, they won 3 games straight. They nearly beat the Rams. Like, they played well down the stretch, all things considered. So last year, and we'll see what the team does with Daboll, because we still got 7 games to go. We'll see if they do indeed fight for him. But last year, when kind of the same thing was creeping up in fans' heads, is the locker room going to fall apart? Daboll was able to get the team to fight for him. So I'll let it play out over the last 7 weeks. Am I going to read too much into what Dexter Lawrence had to say about Daniel Jones? No. At the end of the day, that's his friend. They got drafted together. They were roommates their first year in the pro, I believe, when they were in training camp. So they're very close. He's going to stick up for his friend. Same thing with Darius Slayton, or at least that's who I think said that. So it is what it is. I respect those guys. They're standing up for their teammate. They're standing up for their friend. But at the end of the day, it's a business decision. And I don't necessarily think they've lost the locker room. But at the same time, the team is 2-8. And like Anthony said, yeah, I think some people may be a bit more critical of Joe Schoen. They look at Saquon Barkley, even though I still agree with the decision not to sign him this offseason. I was more so for signing him the previous offseason when they couldn't get a deal done. But they look at not signing Saquon Barkley. They look what he did. They look at the Daniel Jones contract, regardless of how much I at least tried to make sense. They did it. It didn't work out. It was obviously didn't work out to be a good contract. They look at, the totality of the team, the way they've fallen apart the last 2 years, and they say, well, where's this GM taking us? Where's this team going? So I definitely think there's going to be doubt in the locker room, doubt from John Mara at the end of the year, and that's going to be the biggest question mark. We already got the obvious answer. We knew Daniel Jones was going to get replaced. The biggest question mark and most important question mark for this team is in 8 weeks, do we have a new GM and head coach, or do we push forward with the guys that we have? And a lot of it's going to have to do with whether or not he's able to keep that locker room together.
Adriana, your thoughts on the locker room, Brian Daboll, Joe Schoen?
Yeah, I think it's hard to say, right? Because we have to see how these next 7 weeks go. But I do think it's a little bit fractured. I think it's more so has to do with the fact that they're losing. They're 2-8 again for however many years in a row. And it seems like even if they put in Tommy DeVito, I mean, I have no faith that he's going to turn around this whole team. When you look at last year, the defense was playing well week in and week out for years, regardless, or for weeks, excuse me, regardless of what the offense was doing. When you look at the team now, both sides of the ball and even special teams are all playing pretty horribly, that I just don't think DeVito is going to come in here and give enough of a spark for everyone on the team to say, we're going to get our shit together. And I don't know if it's an overall talent thing. I think for the most part of the talent is there. I think it's a mix of everything. It's a mix of the talent, the scheme, execution, effort from guys like Tay Banks. Like, I think across the board, there are a lot of reasons as to why this team sucks and why they're losing. And it's not all Daniel Jones. That's one piece of it. But I think there's definitely some fractures there, and I have a little bit of faith that based on what Daboll did at this point last year, that he'll be able to keep it together through the rest of the season. I mean, I don't expect guys like Dexter Lawrence and Darius Slayton to say anything different. Like, I didn't expect them to come out and be like, yeah, I agree with Daboll. He should have benched Jones. Like, they're never going to come out and say that, you know? So I expect that from them. It is what it is. Dexter said today that Daboll asked him before he made the decision what he thought about it, and he explained his reasons as to why he was doing that. And, you know, Dexter said to him he understands, and it is what it is. We get that this is a business at the end of the day. So I think it kind of just is what it is. I'm very curious to see how things shake out with Joe Schoen, because I heard Jordan Renan say that there are players in the locker room who aren't his biggest fans, which the Nick McLeod thing, I think, was kind of stupid at the end of the day. Like, you've got 7 weeks left. Who are you signing at this point? Tim Boyle, who cost you how much money? Like, just keep McLeod on the roster. We have no depth at corner. I don't care how bad he is, but I just kind of feel like that was a stupid move. Like, I didn't really see the point behind it, and I feel like it wasn't really necessary to stiff arm him into taking a pay cut at this point. Like, you're not turning around the season. We all know that. The players also know that. Like, they're not stupid. Like I said, the whole team needs to get their shit together. It's not like one side of the ball has really been killing it and the other side has just been, you know, kind of slacking, and a new quarterback is going to fix that. So I don't know. The way that I feel is I'm on board with Joe Schoen staying, and I'm 50-50 on Daboll. If he ends up getting fired, I won't be devastated. I won't be rejoicing. And same thing, if he stays, I won't be devastated. I will be optimistic to see what he does with a rookie quarterback.
I remember it was Anthony, or somebody put it in our group text, Tim Boyle, and I said, who the hell is that? Like, I never even heard of this guy. And I think it was
on the Jets and Dolphins, I think.
I didn't even know
I knew of him.
Yeah. But I think Anthony mentioned last week was, you know, they don't want Daniel Jones to even be in the facility.
Right.
Because if he gets hurt, even stepping foot in the field, they could have to pay him the contract. They're in the weight room or anywhere. So it's just like, just go home, dude. We don't need you here. Just go watch the game on television like the rest of the fans do, or do whatever you got to do. Take your $160 million and go have a really good time. It's funny with Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll, because for me, as a guy that's impatient, call for Pat Shermer to be fired immediately, call for Joe Schoen to be fired immediately. I gave Gettleman 4 years, but enough was enough. I was done with Reese. It's amazing how this team is 2-8, and for some reason I still have faith in the GM and the head coach. And I don't know why I feel the way I do. Normally in a 2-8 team, I would just say the hell with it, but I think it's because I'm just hanging on to hope that Daniel Jones, and granted, it's not all his fault. He was put in a bad situation. He faced a lot of pressure, having to fill the shoes of the greatest quarterback in the history of this franchise. He was overdrafted. We know that. None of the fans are on board with this when it happened. Are very, very minimal. We're happy with him being picked 6th overall. I definitely was not. But, you know, it's never worked out. He's never really proven that he could raise the level of his play. He's always been about the same guy. He gives you one good game every 4 or 5 games. He doesn't really elevate the players around him. So I just always have it in the back of my mind that, hey, let's just get these guys their quarterback. Let's see somebody else, because it's not just Joe Schoen and Daboll. He had Shermer as a head coach. He had Judge as a head coach. He had Dave Gettleman as a GM. He had a bunch of different players, had a bunch of different OCs. He's had 5 offense coordinators, 3 head coaches, 2 GMs, how many linemen, how many wide receivers, and the results are the same every year. The offense is one of the worst in the league. And now that they don't have Saquon, now it's really showing up. Not that Tyrone Tracy has not done a great job, because he has, but he's not as, revered as Saquon, where you're like, we got to stop Saquon Barkley. So maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm a little bit crazy. Well, I am crazy. I watch this freaking team every week, so I must be a little touched in the head. But I still have faith in Joe Schoen. But to Adriana's point, if they decided to get rid of him, I'm not going to cry in my beer. I'm not going to cry in my beer when it comes to Brian Daboll either. But I would like to see them get their quarterback. I'd like to see them be able to address it. People could say they signed Daniel Jones. That was a mistake. That's their quarterback. But I always go back to, what is the alternative there?
He wasn't their quarterback. He was their quarterback for the time being. He wasn't their quarterback.
Correct. But this is why they set the contract up like they did. Like, I don't know how much more clearly you can explain to some Giants fans that don't understand the contract is, hey, he got a 2-year player deal with a 2-year team option.
He got 2 tags. He got 2 tags. That's what he got. But
that's exactly what he got. So it's $40 million. What is he paid now? Is he the 17th highest, 18th, 20th highest paid quarterback in the league?
But
it didn't work out.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I'm actually the opposite of you. I try to be as patient as I can be. I'm at the point now, Bad Dog, where, and I've said this in previous shows, I think there's 2 avenues. I think you either fire them now, or both of them, right, or you give them at least 2 more years. Because if you're drafting a rookie quarterback, you can't do to Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward or Jalen or whoever we draft what we did to Daniel Jones. You can't have that fire their offensive coordinator, their play caller after the first year. That's setting them up for a disaster. So I would rather you fire them now than at the end of next year. So if you're kind of like iffy with these guys right now, if you're John Mara, I don't know if he is or isn't, and you're like, if they're bad next year, I'm going to just fire them now. Like, that's where I'm at. If you're going to push forward with these guys, you got to give them at least 2 years with the next quarterback. That's where I'm at. I know Anthony kind of disputed that last time, and I get his mindset. And in his scenario, yeah, if we had like the first pick and that's different. But realistically speaking, I don't think the team's gonna have the first pick next year. That would mean the quarterback we drafted was an atrocity. But if that were to happen, okay. But in a realistic scenario where we have like the 8th or 9th pick, I want them to push forward with this regime for 1 more year if they're going to stick with him. So that's where I'm at. It's either get rid of them now, or you're going to give these guys another 2 years with the rookie quarterback that they draft.
You really think we're picking 8th or 9th? You don't think we're picking 1st or 2nd? I think we're picking.
I know. I mean the following year after you draft.
I'm sorry.
That's what I mean. Yeah. After
you draft this year, I'm like, what?
Yeah. After you draft the quarterback this year, but you never know with this team. They continue to disappoint me whenever they can. So we'll see. But that's where I'm at with it. I'd like to see them get 2 years if you're going to stick with them, or just get rid of them now, start over. The more and more I think about this situation, my biggest worry. We all know right now what Joe Schoen is going to do if he comes back. At least I think. The only scenario where I can't see this happening is if they get a really good veteran quarterback. And I don't know who's going to be able to fall in their lap. Joe Schoen is taking a quarterback whether he loves one or whether he doesn't. That's how he gives himself as much job security as possible. We all know that for the same reason that I just said. If he drafts a quarterback, he's probably getting another year after that. If he doesn't draft a quarterback, his job's on the line next year. He knows it. So that's my biggest worry if you push forward with these guys. Do they just draft the quarterback for the sake of keeping their jobs and they just do it for the sake of it and they don't actually love the prospect? That's my biggest worry right now.
Yeah. Well, it'll be interesting to see what they do this offseason without question, because I honestly think we're picking top 3.
Well, I agree with you.
So it'll be Cameron Ward, please. Thank you, Cameron Ward. I manifest that every day. Cameron Ward, I put that in on Twitter. I put the uniform in, right, the U. I put that in freaking Twitter. People like, oh, so number 7's retired. I'm like, guys, it's not. I didn't put number 7 on the guy. It's just a picture I found on the internet to say that. I just want. I don't care what the hell number he is. Okay, I want him to be the quarterback of the New York Giants, because the way I look at it is this. And Chris, we'll start with you this time. Can you explain this to me? Because maybe it's just me. I feel like the talent this year was actually better. Yes, we lost Saquon Barkley, and I'm not saying you can replace Saquon, but he's a running back. And since Tyrone Tracy's come into the starting lineup, he's had 3 100-yard games. He's averaging 5.5 yards a carry. It's pretty damn good. It's not his fault. He's produced. Now, I know he had the fumble in Carolina, and he was beside himself. I feel like he was a good actor. He fumbled on purpose, run the play. I get it. No, not really. But he's done a pretty damn good job. You had Malik Neighbors. The guy's an absolute beast. We've seen it, all year. He's open a lot. The guy's constantly getting open. He's a playmaker. Wandale's been healthy. We know how good Wandale was last year. And Darius Slayton is, old reliable. He is. And you've seen Theo Johnson have some nice moments. The offensive line, in my opinion, has played better than it had until Andrew Thomas got hurt. The line was better. And yet our offense still sucks. And if anything, it got worse this year. Can you explain that? Like, why do you think we've gone backwards?
I'll explain it. Yeah. It's just my theory, but
because of Daboll play, you think it's Daboll's play calling? I don't understand
part of it, but I don't think it's the biggest reason. I think it's the old adage is so true. Football is a game of inches. In 2022, the Giants weren't very good, but they won the inches. They had the best field goal kicker in the league. Graham Gano had a lot to do with it. You think about all the close games that team won that year, the guy was money every time he stepped up to the plate. He was hitting 56, 57 yarders. Those 3 points matter when you see the kickers we've had the last 2 years and all the kicks we missed. So that's part of it. Obviously, Daniel Jones is not as good as he's been. The quarterback's the most important position. In 2022, he took care of the football. As I talked about a couple of weeks ago, we had an identity with that football team. We knew what we were going to do every week as an offense. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't sexy. We weren't the Chiefs, but you were going to grind the clock. You were going to have long drives, and you were going to be able to keep the defense fresh off the field, and we didn't beat ourselves. But yeah, I just think it's a culmination of a lot of little things, and I think the kicker has a little more to do with it than people realize.
Well, Adriana, why do you think this offense just is unwatchable? Like it's regressed with these new additions to the offense.
The kicker is a good point. I think it's a mix of things. The biggest thing is that we lost Andrew Thomas twice. And as soon as Andrew Thomas went down both years, our offense went to shit. It didn't matter that the rest of the offensive line this year is actually functioning as opposed to last year. I think this year, when Andrew Thomas went down, I know that Jones wasn't doing all that well before that, but he was making some plays more than he made after Andrew Thomas went down. So I think for Jones, like he kind of lost his safety blanket in that. So I think that was part of it. And I think the biggest thing is bad quarterback play. Like last year, we even had Tyrod, who is obviously better than DeVito and Locke. This year, Jones regressed. He's not the same quarterback that he was in 2022. In 2023, he didn't look good either before he got injured and then missed the bulk of the season. And then this year, he's coming back. I think when Thomas goes down, he doesn't trust his offensive line, and he's just not what he used to be. And I think the biggest question mark will be, is it really, outside of Andrew Thomas, just the quarterback thing? Like, again, we all know Tommy DeVito is not Tom Brady, okay? But is he going to come in here and make some of the plays that Daniel Jones was not making? Is he going to be more confident into actually throwing the deep ball and throwing the ball past 10 yards than Daniel Jones was? I don't know. We're going to find out on Sunday. But I do think also part of it is Daboll is limited in the play calling. But I think that he was like that last year too with Tyrod. And
defenses also had a year to adjust to what the Giants were doing. They saw how limited they were, the one read routes with Daniel Jones. They adjusted, and the Giants tried to expand their playbook, and they haven't been able to do it.
Anthony, what do you think the main reason, or what is the reason this offense has gone completely backwards? It's just a dead last in everything. And Daniel Jones finally did throw a home touchdown pass for the first time. That's good. But what do you think is the reason? Because again, I feel like this offense is the most talented. And I think we all went into the year saying this is the most talent Daniel Jones has had on offense. Offensive line, Malik Neighbors, obviously lost Saquon, but you would think going in, hey, this is the best team he's had to work with. And yet it seems like it's been the worst offense that he's run.
I think it's the worst offense that he's run because of him. And I say that because it's a risk-averse offense. And in the NFL, you can't be so afraid to take risks. Daniel Jones doesn't throw interceptions that often, but he never throws touchdowns, and that's the problem. That's why I was kind of excited by the idea of getting Drew Lock in there, because he has a career TD to INT ratio where his interceptions outweigh the touchdowns. And I think that's exactly what the Giants offense needs, a quarterback who's throwing into coverage, because the Giants refuse, with Daniel Jones in the lineup, refuse to throw into coverage. They don't take 50-50 shots. Malik Neighbors has had a couple. He had the one against Cleveland, and I don't think he's really had a go up there and get it ball since. They don't take those kind of shots. They don't expose one-on-one matchups on the outside, and they don't just throw it up there. I use this example all the time. Eli Manning versus the Legion of Boom Seattle Seahawks defense. Double coverage on the right boundary to Victor Cruz versus Richard Sherman and Cam Chancellor. Who throws that ball up there in double coverage other than Eli Manning? What happened on that play? Victor Cruz, 75-yard one-handed touchdown. The Giants haven't had a play like that in a long time because they haven't taken an opportunity or a risk like that in a long time. In 6 years, they really haven't. Daniel Jones
I agree with all
those
that.
throws.
I agree with all that. But Daniel Jones was the quarterback at 22 also. So they weren't taking shots.
They weren't creating explosive plays in 22. They were.
Yeah, they weren't.
And their explosive plays were Saquon Barkley.
I'm just comparing the 2022 team to the 2024 team. Daniel Jones, from a big play standpoint, is basically the same thing. The only difference is he took care of the football better, and he was more of a threat of a runner. Maybe the recovering from the injury has something to do with that. But that's why I mentioned the little things too, because that team did the little things well. But 100% agree with you. Daniel Jones, since his rookie year, hasn't been a guy that looked to make big plays, or at least not nearly often enough.
Rookie year, he threw him up there. I was at that game in Tampa Bay, his first career start. He rolls left and throws it 55 yards to the right hash, and somehow it lands in Darius Slayton's arms. I haven't seen him make a throw like that since his first start. It's insane. He just stopped taking those risks along the way. I don't know if you want to blame Jason Garrett, if you want to blame the offensive line. And, we've seen quarterbacks get crippled by just what's been around them and all of the bad coaching around them. We've seen it happen, and maybe that is what's happened with Daniel Jones. But at the end of the day, the risks haven't been taken. And when you look back at that 2022 team, sure, they were also risk averse. However, the margin for error on that team versus this team is different, because I just think they had a little bit more going for them that year. The teams had less film on Brian Daboll's offense. They didn't know exactly what they were facing every single week. It was a new team. And like you mentioned, the kicker was playing out of his mind. So they had a couple more things going their way in 2022 than they have over the last couple of years. And the margin for error has just become paper thin. So for that reason, they've been avoiding as much risk as they can. But at the same time, in avoiding risk, you're not taking chances. And football is a game of chances. You have to send the ball downfield and take some shots. And the Giants don't do it. So as a result, for the last 2 years, what have we heard Brian Daboll say every training camp? We're working on finding ways to generate more explosive plays. They bring in explosive playmakers. They've brought in speedsters. Jalen Hyatt is a speedster. They had John Ross a couple of years ago. Like, they've got guys who are fast, who they want to throw the ball downfield to, and these guys don't get any targets. Why? The quarterback isn't throwing them. And we know that it's the quarterback because we've all seen the millions of breakdowns. We've seen it called out 100 times on the broadcast. There's always players running deep routes downfield. Sure, maybe there's some safety help. Maybe there's a safety in the middle of the field. But the shots are there to be taken, and they're never taken. And I do feel like it started when Jason Garrett got hired. So I would say that it probably is a coaching thing that broke Daniel Jones. But either way, he is a broken quarterback. Whether it was coaching years ago or not, it doesn't matter. He's
6
broken.
years in the NFL is a lifetime, man.
Exactly.
It doesn't matter.
He's had every opportunity. The Giants have given him those opportunities. Playmakers are on the field running deep, basically just doing cardio all game, and he throws it underneath and checks it down anyway. Open receivers, covered receivers even. Throw it to the covered receivers because sometimes they make the play for you. We have seen Malik Neighbors do it a couple times this season, but not enough. So that's really what I think is wrong with this offense. They're afraid to take risks. And that's why I'm a proponent of getting a different quarterback in there for that spark, whether that was Locke or DeVito. One of these two guys is going to go out there, play like they have nothing to lose because they don't, throw it up there and let those playmakers make plays. And that's hopefully going to result in more explosive plays. But on the flip side, if it doesn't result in that, then it probably tells you that there are bigger issues at play within the coaching and the playbook. And then you probably turn to Brian Daboll if you don't start to generate more explosive plays with a new quarterback. And then we have the conversation about blowing it up in the offseason. But If we still lose, however, there's a couple more explosive plays per game.
Yeah.
I will have my answer here. It will be that Daniel Jones was not taking the shots that were given to him, and he was the problem with this offense. And now I need to see what a quarterback that's willing to push the ball downfield will do in this system.
Yeah, to your point, when they have taken the deep shot, he's missed by a mile. Like he's not close, underthrown, overthrown, out of bounds, not even close. And the big problem with Daniel Jones, to your point, Anthony, and you guys' points, is that he doesn't take risks and he doesn't anticipate. His anticipatory skills suck. You have to throw guys open. You can't wait for them to come open because by that point it's too late. You need to lead guys on crossing routes, not throw it into their chest and not throw it behind him where the defender is. And this is why he turns the ball over. He's never been able to lead guys. He doesn't put air under the ball. He doesn't let receivers run under the ball. He's been so inaccurate for so many years now that even when guys are open and he does take the shots, it's rare that he hits them. So it does become extremely frustrating for the fan base. Now, Anthony, you mentioned this too, the risk reward thing. This is why I like Cameron Ward. Cameron Ward will throw some, whoa, what the hell was that? Running right, throwing across, might throw an interception. But you see how many he might throw 2 picks, but in the same game, he might throw 5 touchdowns. That is the guy that I want. Give me a guy that takes those chances. Put it in the defense's head. Wow, you never know when this guy's going to break off a 70-yard touchdown pass. You just don't know when it's coming, but it's there. And those type of things do give you a spark. Now, last year, again, we didn't have many deep plays. And the Daniel Jones are still guys defending Daniel Jones, which I don't understand. They still do. I remember last year saying, look at Tyrod Taylor take deep shots down the field. He took many deep shots. The offensive line's better than it was when Daniel Jones was in there. I'm like, what are you talking about, man? They picked Justin Pugh up off the couch to play left tackle. The offensive line wasn't really good when Tyrod Taylor or Tommy DeVito were in there winning games. So I don't understand. Daniel Jones just isn't a guy that can play at an effective level as an NFL starter. Not in my opinion. Maybe he goes somewhere else. Maybe he clears his mind. Maybe he gets in a better situation. And maybe he does become a decent quarterback.
Vikings, it's possible. Yeah. Right. If he gets put in the right spot, it's possible.
I don't know. I don't know.
I'm not predicting it, but it's possible.
Right. But again, I think more so with Daniel Jones, it's just really become a mental thing without question. And it's always been my hang up with Daniel Jones is just mentally, can he do it? And obviously he can't. You don't teach instincts. You don't teach courage. You don't coach that stuff. The guys either have that in them or they don't. Listen, I don't like Jalen Hurts. We all know this. I hate the Eagles. I can't stand the Eagles. I like to mention that as often as I can, that I hate Philadelphia. But one thing I'll give Jalen Hurts credit for is the guy just knows how to win. He just he has that in him. That's not coached. He just has that instinct of how to win, when to make the right throw, when to make the right read, when to make the right play, when to run, he knows. Is he a great quarterback? I don't think he's a great quarterback skill-wise, and I think he benefits from a great team around him, but he also knows what to do in situations where I feel like Daniel Jones just has no clue what the hell he's doing in certain situations. I want
to bring up Cologne's comment from the chat because I think I want to give my point on this because I used to say these things too. He says, blame DJ. What about all the drops, especially from Neighbors and Robinson? And there's no doubt about it. I remember in 2022, the Giants led the league in drops, so they were among one of the league leaders in drops, despite the fact that they didn't throw a whole lot. So the Giants have had drop problems since Daniel Jones has been there. But here's the difference. Daniel Jones is not good enough to overcome drops. And an elite or a franchise quarterback is. That's all there is to it. Like, for the Giants to win with Daniel Jones at quarterback, they have to do everything right. You look around the league, you look at these other quarterbacks. I watched Jordan Love with the Packers. The guy throws 3 interceptions a game, and the Packers still win. So
Mahomes is having a terrible year, right? And for him,
that's the difference. That's the Daniel Jones. There's no doubt about it. The Giants do have crucial drops. They still have crucial drops, but they aren't. He isn't able to overcome that. He's not a starting quarterback. He's not a guy that you want as your franchise quarterback.
Right. Adriana, where does Daniel Jones play next year?
I think he could go to Charlotte just because that's where he's from. So I could see him going back there. I'm like, if you're David Tepper, I don't know why you would do that, but I also think David Tepper is stupid. So maybe he would go for that. That wouldn't entirely surprise me. But I think he could be a backup somewhere, but I also could see him going home and not having anywhere else to go. I also saw someone be like, what if he went to the Jets? And honestly, would love it. Nothing
Would that be the most Jets thing ever?
I know. I'm on board. I'm going to root for him to go to the Jets.
Do you think it's possible? And I hate that we're still talking about Daniel Jones, but
well, I mean, we're gonna talk about him this week, and then we're gonna move on.
No, I'm just saying I can't wait till next year when we're talking about Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward.
Next week, Brian will be talking about.
Yeah, well, I'm saying in a Giants uniform. But do you think it's possible Daniel Jones can go to a team like, I don't know, Denver with Sean Payton, and they could use him the way that the Saints used Taysom Hill when Sean Payton was the offensive coordinator?
I've heard
Do
that.
you see a role like that for him, a niche like that for him?
But he'd be a backup there, right? He'd
be a backup, but you use him in sub packages like Taysom Hill. No, you can't see it?
Takes a high IQ football player for that. And I don't view Daniel Jones as being the highest IQ.
Yeah.
Sure, but
yeah,
I don't see it.
You know,
I think he's an accountant next year personally. I think he's done.
Yeah. I'm just trying to look at ways that some teams may look to maximize his skill set.
You know, Anthony, you don't think he's in the NFL next year, even as a backup? You don't think he goes to Minnesota?
I'm sure he finds a backup job somewhere, but I think that team will dread having to put him on the field if they ever have to. And I don't know. I don't see him getting much playing time. Like, it's different with, you know, people want to make the comparison. Oh, Sam Darnold looked like he was flaming out of the league, and now he's had his kind of career resurgence. Sam Darnold was a USC quarterback who went top 3 in a really strong quarterback class. He always had the physical tools and attributes. He was an incredible prospect. Daniel Jones was never that. He was never the level of talent that Baker Mayfield was coming out, that Sam Darnold was coming out. It's just
Kyler Murray. He wasn't Kyler Murray.
Right. It's a different level of physical and raw talent that he never possessed. The argument for Daniel Jones was the mental processing and being a smart quarterback out of Duke and playing in a pro offense, and none of those things worked out for him. What didn't work out were those things for Sam Darnold, arguably, in his first go-around as a starter, but the physical tools and traits were always there, so he just needed the proper coaching to finally get it right, and now he's getting it right. It's not going to happen for Daniel Jones. I mean, he cycled through so many coaches. That's just me personally. Maybe I'm wrong, whatever. I don't really care if I'm right or wrong. Like, kind of like we were talking about earlier, the sympathy for Daniel Jones. I don't have it, you know, whatever. You got 6 years to prove it. It didn't work out. Maybe he gets another opportunity elsewhere. I don't think he does.
Anthony, is the same mindset I have with Evan Ingram. People like complain that Evan Ingram got better when he went to Jacksonville. Evan Ingram was never going to work here. If Daniel Jones goes somewhere else and he becomes a good starting quarterback, it wasn't going to happen here. So that's my mindset. It's time to move on.
True that.
Yeah. Anthony said he's low. You know, it's funny you mentioned the coming out of Duke, because when I did a live stream Monday after this had happened, when they decided to bench him, I played Todd McShay's draft analysis the night they drafted him, and he could not have been more spot on about Daniel Jones. Like, if you I'm sure every one of you have seen that clip of Tom McShay saying he doesn't process. He's terrible under pressure. He's the worst in the league. Out of 15 draftable quarterbacks, he was 14th and under pressure. He can't process fast. If he can run, he's a good kid. They like him. He works hard, but I see him as a backup. This is exactly what he said the night they drafted him. And man, 6 years later and $200 million later, or whatever the hell he got paid over the course of the last 6 years, Todd McShay was absolutely right about Daniel Jones. And for the life of me, I will never understand why they made that pick. And that pick kind of made me, I guess it made me more famous on YouTube, because everybody saw my out-of-body experience for not taking Josh Allen that year, not the quarterback, obviously the edge rusher. I was freaking pissed. I always wonder what would have happened if they would have just went Josh Allen. Yeah, they probably
Justin Herbert, probably.
They could have, or they could have ended up with Daniel Jones on 17. You never know. But they would have drafted Josh Allen, Dexter Lawrence, and the next year got Justin Herbert. With Chris, you and I started our show 7 years ago, and that was the guy we were very high on in 2019. We wanted them to draft Justin Herbert. Obviously, stayed in Oregon the next year, and we missed out on him, which is what pissed me off even more about Dave Gettleman reaching for the quarterback at 19 when you looked at the 2020 draft class and saw there was 3 top guys coming out.
And you had the built-in excuse that Eli was still good enough to be the starter for the next year. You didn't need to draft a quarterback. You didn't need to reach on one. That was the thing that really infuriated me.
Anthony, got to see.
Yeah. I want to jump in there. That's the argument that I was making at the end of last week's episode. Had the Giants not hired a new head coach under the same GM in 2019, let's say they blew it up after 2019, like they went ahead, they drafted Daniel Jones in the first round, everything went to crap, and they got a new GM and a new head coach at the same time. There's a chance that they could have gone and drafted another quarterback and taken Justin Herbert. So that's the point I was making last week, where if the Giants are going to fire one of these guys at the end of the season, fire both of them. Fire Shane and Daboll, full reboot. Don't half-ass it. Don't force another quarterback onto a head coach. Just totally wipe the slate clean like you should have done in 2020. Had they done it back then, maybe we do have Justin Herbert, and maybe we are a playoff team, and maybe we are seeing a legendary Sunday night matchup like the one I just saw in LA. But because they forced a certain coach to take on a certain quarterback, here we are all these years later trying over and over again, and it's just not going to work out.
I still think they're both going to be back, by the way. I'm going to continue to say that, but
I think so too. But
I'm not going to be stunned if they move on either. I'm not going to be stunned.
Yeah, I'll just be pissed if they fire one and not the other.
I agree.
No, they do definitely blow it all up at the same time. I agree. All right, let's have a little fun here for the last 7 minutes or so. Adriana, hypothetically, we're picking first. Who are you taking and why?
Probably Cam Ward. I personally like to lean towards SEC guys, so I do really like Jalen Milroe, but I think overall Cam Ward has the full package for the Giants, and I just like also being an SEC person. I'm like 50-50 on Alabama as a whole. So that's what worries me. But I do think Jalen Milroe has a lot of good qualities that would make him successful in the NFL. And I do think that working with Daboll, he would end up being a good quarterback. But I think that from a talent perspective and like I worry about Milroe with the interceptions. He's had a lot of those as of late, and the inconsistency scares me more. So I feel like Cam Ward, to me, feels a little bit safer.
Chris, we're picking first. Who are you taking?
I know you guys are going to pick Cam Ward, and I like Cam Ward, and I'll be happy if they take Cam Ward. And maybe I will change my opinion. We still got a long way to go. I would take Shedeur Sanders, and I know a lot of Giants fans are scared off by that. They think about it's the same things I heard last year, though. You know, a month or two before the draft, when Giants fans were saying, "Oh, Malik Neighbors, the personality concerns me." I don't think the Giants will draft. Like, you saw a lot of people say that Rome Odunze is a better fit for what the New York, from a personality standpoint, for what the New York Giants are looking for. The Giants didn't go that route. They went for who they felt was the better player. And I don't think I don't think the personality thing is gonna play as much a factor as people think that I see on Twitter when they're talking about Shedeur Sanders. The thing that I was really impressed with CJ Stroud as a prospect that stood out to me when I watched him wasn't his unbelievable arm strength, like a Josh Allen, like my jaw dropped. It was his mechanics. When I watched his footwork, when I watched his throwing motion, that impressed me a lot. And I see similar traits with Shedeur Sanders. I like his mechanics. He looks like a polished quarterback. And I think his arm strength, while it's not great, is better than people are giving him credit for. So I like both of them. I won't be upset if they take either one. But if I had to pick one today, I would pick Shedeur Sanders.
And the one thing you can say about Shedeur Sanders is he's pretty seasoned behind a really shitty offensive line, because last year, if you watch Shedeur Sanders, he got killed. That offensive line was horrific last year. So I guess he knows how to play under duress, which certainly helps coming to the New York Giants because our quarterbacks seem to play under duress. Although maybe it is just Daniel Jones. We'll see if Tommy DeVito can get rid of the ball quicker. But Tommy DeVito took a ton of sacks last year as well. Now, the offensive line was terrible, but we'll see if he can release the ball quicker or not. I'm sure there's statistics out there that show how long Daniel Jones actually has to throw the ball and how long he holds on to the ball. So he's always had that nervous habit of patting freaking ball instead of just throwing the damn thing. So Anthony, I know that you're a Cameron Ward guy. So give us why you want Cameron Ward.
Well, I like Cam Ward for the reasons that we've mentioned: his aggressiveness, his willingness to take shots, his risk-taking ability, and I like his poise under pressure. I like the way that he extends plays within the pocket. He'll escape from the pocket, but it's not like his legs are a major focal point. It's more like what we saw from CJ Stroud coming out. And I'm not saying that it's a one-to-one talent comparison, not comparing the talent, but the playing style. Stroud is very good at kind of backing up, buying time behind the line of scrimmage and then finding somebody downfield rather than buying time and bailing on the pocket and picking up yards with his legs. I see some of that in Cam Ward, just his ability to stay in the pocket, his desire to remain in the pocket. And I think that's a trait of a really good quarterback who not only can be good long-term, but good from day one. And Shedeur Sanders has those traits as well. And there is part of me that's intrigued by Sanders because, yeah, the Hall of Fame bloodline is something to be excited about. And it's almost like when you draft a kid like that and he's got this kind of star power and he's got Deion Sanders as his father behind him, can he fail? You know, like it just feels like one of those situations where the NFL won't let the kid fail. They want him to be a star. They will push him forward as much as they can. So sometimes that star power means a little bit of something. And that's why I'm open to, you know, either one of those two guys. I like them both. But if you really were asking me what I would do if we were picking number one, if possible, I'd trade our second round pick and maybe the following one and try and right the wrong from last year. And I would take JJ McCarthy away from the Minnesota Vikings somehow. And then I would go with the number one overall pick. I would trade down for a king's ransom and fill out all the other endless holes on this roster. If you can find a young quarterback with upside elsewhere and then build out the rest of this team, maybe you do that. But obviously that's not realistic.
I at least like that potential scenario. I don't think it's going to happen. I think Minnesota.
It's not. I just want to throw it out there for fun.
The scenario you just suggested, Anthony, if they only had to surrender maybe 2 seconds to get him,
sure,
you could always just move off of McCarthy in another year if he's not the guy. Like, so I do think he has upside, and I think he's comparable to any quarterback in this class. So I don't hate that scenario you just played out. But yeah, the thing that I'll say about Cam Ward, and again, I want to watch these guys more before I conclusively say. The one thing that I like about Cam Ward more is exactly what you just said over Shedeur Sanders. There's times where I watch Shedeur Sanders, he backpedals too much, he runs into sacks. I feel like Ward is better in that aspect of his game. What you brought up about extending plays, making something out of nothing. So from that standpoint, I think Cam Ward has a leg up.
Is it possible that we talk about another quarterback? And I mentioned this weeks ago. Is it possible that if Sam Darnold hits free agency, that the Giants would take a guy like that? Or maybe it's not Sam Darnold. Maybe they don't. Maybe they don't like a quarterback. I can't see him picking first and not taking a quarterback. But perhaps it's possible that they would go out and grab one and trade the number one pick back. Or maybe they take a guy like Travis Hunter, who is going to be the first non-quarterback off the board. And he's probably going to win the Heisman Trophy. The kid is just utterly ridiculous. His talent's unbelievable. He's crazy. I mean, it's so much fun to watch Travis Hunter play. The Giants would have a lot of opportunities. Now, I don't know that they're going to pick first, but I do think they're going to pick top three. I joke around with my brother-in-law all the time because he's a Raiders fan, and I always tell him, stay away from my damn quarterback. So the Raiders, he texted me last week before the game. He texted me that the Raiders were ahead of the Giants. And then after the Cowboys lost, all of a sudden our strength of schedule went down and we jumped the Raiders. So I showed him that and he goes, that's going to go back and forth all year. Yes, I believe it is. But I will say this as we approach an hour, these hours always fly by. I do think that I can't guarantee it, but no, I won't guarantee anything. This is probably going to be our last show that Daniel Jones is the focus of, because this is really the end of Daniel Jones. He's done.
It'll be DeVito next week, yeah.
Right, we'll be talking about DeVito. We'll be talking about Locke. We'll be talking. The draft is obviously going to. I think when we do this during the offseason, when we get to April and the draft is right around the corner, I think the show will be huge.
Yeah.
I think it'll be awesome, and I'm looking forward to it. But I'm glad to have you guys here because it's good to talk Giants football, even though we just absolutely suck. But it's good to get other people's perspectives on stuff, and it's good to cry on one another's shoulders. I say misery loves company. We're 4 miserable Giants fans, and there's got to know how many other millions of miserable Giants fans there are out there. But listen, you got to hit rock bottom before you can come up. Maybe. I've been saying this for years, though. Maybe we hit rock bottom, then we find a new depth to hit. But I think the absolute downright just upheaval or jettisoning Daniel Jones and never going to see him in the Giants uniform again, I think this finally does turn a corner. Now, we'll see if there's a wall around this corner or if they have a light at the end of the tunnel. But no more Daniel Jones, and that should be a lot of weight off these guys' chests. They don't have to address this anymore, and neither do we. So with that said, we're going to get out here. We appreciate you watching. If you haven't done so, like it, subscribe, and come back next week, and we'll do it again, and we'll be talking about a loss to Tampa Bay, and we'll see how he does.
Hey, you never know. You never know.
He
He did it last year.
Losing.
Sunday.
But hey, maybe next week we'll all come in and have a piece of pizza and a cannoli. Yay! You never
Forget
know.
about it.
I think we got a shot this week. I'm not ruling us out. Tampa's not
Hey, yeah, right. The guy. Where's hold on a second. I think I have something here. Where'd I go? There we go. Here we go. We'll go out like this. With that said, have a good night, everybody. We'll see you next time. We have.